we might do that other thing of we might get the right sort of people because we've increased our conversion rate, which is getting the right sort of people on your website. So the people that live locally, the people that maybe are affluent, the people that need your services right now. If we can get them on your website, that $50 cost per lead is more likely to turn into more jobs because you convert them $50 more and more often are turning into genuine, well-paid jobs.
Welcome everybody in to the Nice Job podcast, another live chat coming your way. All we ask as you listen into this chat is just to take something from here and execute it, put it in your business. If you have the notepad, like if you're not driving, if you're sitting down listening, notepad will be helpful for this episode in particular. Take some good notes. But if you are driving, if you're walking the dog, you're unable to write notes down, couple of things. If you're listening to the audio only version, at the very end, I will have a recap with my key takeaways. So I'll give you a nice summary at the end. If you're watching on the live version or any of the video versions on YouTube or a repeat on Facebook, go back and mark where those key things happen. Put a little comment below, and you can even comment below note. I've seen people do this. Comment below note, and we'll know that we said something that you want to know more about, and maybe we can send something your way or dive in more to the conversation. As you know, here on the Nice Job podcast, it's all about finding experts that not only bring great knowledge, but bring a fun, engaging energy. And my guest today absolutely encompasses all of that. We were talking a bit before we started hopping on the record on the podcast here. Great conversation back and forth. And just in the pre-interview, I learned something. So now that we're on the main stage, I am excited to learn even more. It is Daisy Foster from Digitool. Daisy, how are you today?
Hey, I'm really good, thank you. Really well. Thank you for having me on.
It is my pleasure to have you on. We've actually never had a deeper conversation. I would like to say in the digital realm, we've been in the same place, same time. I believe we both spoke at Made Summit. We both recorded presentations for that. And I think there was another event where we happened to both be on the digital lineup. But it's great to actually talk to you in person. For those that aren't familiar, let's start high level. Let's start right at the top. Tell us about who you are and what you're doing out there in the world.
Of course, thanks. Yes, my name's Daisy. And I'll start at the very beginning. Is my family have a cleaning business. They specialize in carpet cleaning, tile cleaning, upholstery cleaning. And I've been working in that business since I was 4. I started with absolute child labor, where at 4 years old, I was watching, I think it was Barney, and I was licking and sticking stamps on envelopes that were going to be the mail shots for our Christmas campaign. I've then since progressed, and at points in the summer, I used to do telesales where I'd call customers and say, it's been 12 months since you had your carpets cleaned. And in true entrepreneur spirit, my dad had put me and my sister in like competition, and whoever would get the most calls that day, the most sales, would get like a new present, or we'd go out for tea and we could choose the place. Then as it progressed, I then went off to college, came back and saw that my dad's business was, I think, just after getting some perspective for being away from 3 years at college, going back and seeing my dad's business, I was actually just really shocked. It was nothing new, but what it was my dad was working every hour God sent. He'd wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. He'd open up his laptop. He'd do some invoices, try and do some emails. Then he'd get in the van and he'd go out and clean carpets. Even though he had a fleet of vans, it was if someone had called in sick, he was the one cleaning it up. Not cleaning up the sick, but going instead of another technician. If a customer had made a complaint, it was him that was at the front door with a bouquet of flowers. He'd then go into the office and run that for the whole day. Bonkersly, my dad, although he had 2 girls in the office that answered the phone, he was also answering the phone. And his day was just hectic. I just couldn't get a word in. I couldn't have a chat with him. And he'd come home at maybe like 7. We'd all sit on the couch to watch some telly, and my dad would be asleep by 9 p.m, just absolutely exhausted. And it was quite shocking to see, because I didn't get to spend some time with my dad. And what I noticed was that had been the case all of my childhood. I'm so proud of him. He's provided a brilliant life for me and my family, but at the expense of him working really hard and him not get to enjoy the fruit of his labors. The amount of holidays that we cancelled because a truck had broke down or because another employee had been sick was crazy. And it felt like all this hard work didn't seem worth it. So where I come back into that is I then said, hey, Dad, can I just help with your marketing and try and automate your business a little bit? I was straight out of college, probably a little bit cocky and confident, thinking that I could do it. Realized it was really hard. And for maybe 3 years, we chucked on like that. I was answering the phones, doing some marketing and automation. And we got to a really steady point. We got to a point where we weren't millionaires, but my dad was taking weekends off. He wasn't getting up at silly o'clock, and the business was just more stable. He could breathe, he could go on holidays, and it was just starting to regain a normal life that was also really profitable. Yeah, that's the start.
Yeah. Well, I want to actually dive in something interesting on that, because it's going to segue to what our overall topic is today about, debunk the marketing junk. And not so much like the good and the bad, but sometimes it's just those kind of basic things. But you touched on that entrepreneurial spirit in the good way, and I don't want to say the bad way, but sometimes so many entrepreneurs think that it needs to be a grind. That they think if they're taking the time off or they're pushing something into automation and losing that touch point, that physical touch point in a sense, that it's less of a grind and therefore makes them less successful. Was that a hard sell to your dad? I mean, granted, being family, I'm sure he's going to put a lot of faith and trust in you that you're guiding the right way. But was there ever a moment as automation started to kick in and even seeing some success where you could still see him having that itch of, he's not doing something, that he lost that grind?
That's such a good question. I imagine a lot of people listening to this heard themselves in that first story of, I work hard. Yeah, I've had to cancel vacations. Yeah, I want to be working a little bit less. But there is a little badge of honor that goes with working really hard. I get it. I'm guilty of that as well, where we want to be seen as being like a grafter. But what I'd say to those people is, if you can take a little bit of time off, if you could just sleep in an extra hour, or you can take weekends off, or you can take holidays, that is when the ideas, the imaginative ideas for how to actually grow this business really kick in. You can't have the $1 million idea when you are just grinding and you're on autopilot. And also, I'd say, why did you start this business in the first place? Us as entrepreneurs that own home service businesses, we're all a little bit snobby. We don't want to be working in an office for someone else. We're kind of proud that we're doing it ourselves. But why are we doing it ourselves? I'm doing it because I want to earn a really good income for my family, but I also want to be time rich. I want to spend more time with my family. I want to be able to go to my children's nativity play. I want to be there for every soccer game. I want to be there for all the special moments, and I'm not willing to compromise. And when you are grinding 12 hours a day, you're not able to do that.
Yeah, I heard a great quote that was, you don't fill family albums, you don't fill photo books with the work you've done. You fill those with the fruits of your labor, with what you were able to do because taking your family on a vacation, going, as you mentioned, children's sports or plays, activities, things of that nature. That usually goes in the photo album. There's not many where you're like, man, look at this 3/4 pipe that I put in there. This this is a memory thing. But that stuff matches the book. And when you said people in the grind being on autopilot, I never really thought about it. But that's kind of where they end up, They're not actually being innovative or really expanding. They fall into this autopilot sort of thing, which is interesting because sometimes the thing they fear about automation is that they feel it's just going to be the same thing over and over. But when you start automating your business and when you start kind of putting in some systems, there's still monitoring and tracking that is going on there, which I'll let you touch on that first, but I'm going to say that leads to our topic of, making sure you know what you look like and things like that. But
Yes.
it's interesting you put that, like being on autopilot, because when you automate and go on and start bringing in systems, like there's actually a lot more work to be done at that point.
Oh, no, I see exactly where you're at. So automation's the idea that you replace the manual labor that you're doing. So them jobs that you're doing continuously, maybe turning up to quotes and writing them physically out. Maybe it's maybe it's exactly how you do your version of a labor job. It's replacing that with a system that works better, whether that's something digital or it's just a smarter idea. Automation, it can sometimes feel like, oh, but we pride ourselves on the fact that we have loads of points of contact with the customers and we know all of our customers' first names. Automation does not have to take that away. To give a really easy example, my family, on top of their cleaning business, they also have a rug plant. So people send expensive rugs in, we clean them and we send them back. We were running around like headless chickens trying to do all of the jobs. When we started to automate it, so one of the manual ways was we just have like different places. So you place a dirty rug here, then it goes to step 2, then it goes to step 3. So that's kind of like a manual automation. But some of the digital automations we've done is like when that rug goes to step 4, which means it's been cleaned, we get a little ping on our computer to say that rug's in step 4. Why don't you just give Mrs. Smith a call to say it's been cleaned, it looks amazing. At this stage, I did notice when I was in your house that you had 2 puppies. Did you want me to put a puppy protection on the mat on your rug? That isn't taking away the human element. If anything, it's adding more human elements that we weren't able to do before because we were running around like crazy people trying to make this rug system work. Now it does work. It means we have more touch points with our customers. They're more personalized and the customer feels really listened to and that their rug cleaning journey is completely unique to them. So automation can still have all the human elements. And because you buy in yourself more time by reducing the amount of manual labor you're doing, you can add in them lovely things, the things that make you the special company that your competitor isn't.
And even in that exact example, at the very end, oh, she had puppies, want to do that, opportunities for upselling or to get on a follow-up service. Like we've gotten through it. This type of rug you probably should clean every couple of months or things like that. And so that might not be something that you have the time to even think about. All right, well, how do I structure follow-up service? Maybe a discount for more frequent use, or what can I actually upsell different parts? If you're kind of in that grind and making sure that you're constantly working and going, you probably don't get the opportunity to even think about what that next level looks like. And I often use the line whenever someone goes like, "Wow, automation," or they kind of the eye roll if they're in like carpentry or things like that. I always ask them. I say, "Do you use a drill?" I'm like, "You realize a drill is just an automated wrist, right? Like you could use a screwdriver and do it yourself, but you have no problem using the drill." And as they know, if you give a drill to anybody, it doesn't make them a carpenter. There is still knowing how to use it and that sort of training and structure and knowledge. So to come back, we're going to dive in a little bit to the marketing element. And when you and I were talking before we started recording here, I talked about some things I might want to discuss in this episode. And part of the impetus of this episode was sometimes as business owners, you are focused on the business, or you got in there, maybe you're a technician that is now running your own business. And there's a lot of marketing, either terms or strategies that you kind of hear. You might have a general understanding, but a little misinformation will down the road kind of make it more difficult to kind of succeed and go through. So I was like, sometimes as marketers, we focus on a lot of these deep things and we get a lot of nods and we're taking that as understanding, but it's actually kind of glazing through. And you correctly identified the point that I want to bring up was actually even a step before. And you talked about, there's some, magic metrics or, the key metrics, or there's something that, if this is a core thing that you understand it'll at least help your understanding going forward. So Daisy, I'll ask you, do you have that magic metric? We didn't get too deep into it beforehand, but now we're on the air. It's time to get after it. Is there a magic metric that you think like, hey, understand this one at your core, and that's going to take you a lot of places?
I have one metric that if you focus on, your business just got easier.
That's all right. This is the part where you make sure you have your pen ready to go. Go ahead, Daisy.
Yeah. So just to give you guys a little bit of background, worked in my family's cleaning business for a long time, but now I have my own marketing business. We're a small team, but we service hundreds of home service businesses. So this data that I'm about to talk about isn't just from my family's cleaning business, it's from all of the range of home service businesses we work with. So I'm talking to you out there as well. This is so relevant for you. And the magic metric, so the thing I would focus on, let's take all of the marketing metrics out the way. There's so many and it confuses things. The one thing that I want you to focus on today is what is your cost per lead for all the different types of marketing you're doing? What is your cost per lead for the different types of marketing you're doing? So what's your cost per lead? Now, little asterisks here. Some guys are going to know so much about marketing and think, phew, I know what my cost per lead is. I coach people, I work with them day in, day out. And some of the most advanced home service businesses I work with that are churning in millions, although they know the theory of what cost per lead is, if I ask them today, okay, well, your flyer campaign, what's the cost per lead for that? What about your Google ads? What's the cost per lead? They don't physically know that number. Now, I'm not throwing any shade at anyone. I'm just saying, even if you feel like you're a really smart marketing person, you really on it, it's useful for us to go back to these basics, because these are numbers that if you knew today, we can use them to power up your business tomorrow. And that's exciting.
And to relate to what we were talking about before, as you go to dive a bit deeper, this was the sort of thing you talked about. Was I was talking about a bit more, and you're like, yeah, but if you didn't know your cost per lead, you'd be working so hard on those other things and probably not getting the best value of your cost per lead. So you might have some metrics that you love, but you'd have a higher cost per lead than you might need because you were forgetting the fundamental understanding.
Exactly. So shiny object syndrome. There's so much you can focus on in marketing. There's so many cool things about marketing. But until we know the basics, we can't go forward. So let's start at the basics.
Yep.
Cost per lead. What is it? So cost per lead is looking at what is the total cost of a particular marketing campaign. So I'm going to focus for easy's sake on flyers. And I'm going to use a real example that I was speaking to someone about yesterday. So a home service business I know, every month he delivers 10,000 flyers in his neighborhood. He's got a really good system where he's got 10 different pockets that he delivers to. They're the 10 areas that his ideal customer lives in. And he delivers leaflets to them on rotation. And once he's done all 10, he goes back again. So every month he prints off 10,000 flyers, and that costs him $500. He then has one or two guys that go out, rain or shine, and delivers them leaflets. Flyers. Leaflets is the UK word. But to deliver them flyers, it costs about $2,000 a month. So the total cost for that marketing is $500 for printing, $2,000 in labor, so $2,500. If he looks at any given month, he gets about 30 inquiries from that leaflet. So that's someone picking up the phone and saying, I just saw your flyer. He actually does something that's so genius that I need to share with everyone before I go on, because I actually didn't know about this little hot tip, and I thought it was great, is that on every single flyer, so he does that round of 10 different areas.
Yeah.
He will put, if you want this special offer today, call Matt. And he sends out all them flyers. Once he's done that round of flyers, he'll put the same flyer out again, but put, if you want this special offer today, call Steve. And the reason he does that is he's able to identify there's no Matt, no Steve that works at his
Yeah, that's
business.
all tracking. That's amazing.
Exactly. So the second someone picks up the phone and says, hey, is Steve there? He knows that inquiry has come from his flyers. So going back to the cost per lead, he's spent $2,500, and he knows that in any given month, because of that tracking, because 30 people have asked for Steve that month, he knows that he got 30 inquiries. So your cost per lead really simply is cost of marketing, 2,500, divided by the amount of inquiries you've had, 30. So in that case, his cost per lead for his flyer campaign works out at $83.33.
Yeah,
So
and with that breakdown, so you talk about that's for that flyer campaign. As some business owners out there, or if you're just starting out, that's the key thing is you're going to have more channels. So it's not just flyers and it's things like that. So I guess one of the basic, or at least my first kind of takeaway here is knowing exactly what my cost per lead is, but now understanding I'm going to have different channels and therefore I'm going to have different numbers.
exactly.
And so as you're kind of looking at different channels, you're kind of evaluating, figured out is that could also give you what might be worth more investment and what might be worth less investment, correct?
Exactly. So I'm going to pick some numbers out the sky here, but it might be that it's $83.33 for your flyer campaign. It might be that you're running a consistent Facebook ad and that's $50 for a cost per lead. Your Google Ads campaign might be $40 for a cost per lead. It's important to know all of the different ones. So just as you said, you can know, right, well, if I had an extra $1,000 this month, which one should I invest it in? And to also, I actually believe, and I think this pandemic has really proven this, that we need them different channels. I work in the digital marketing, that's my core business, but I believe you need your flyers, you need your Google Ads campaigns, you need a website that's SEO optimized, because all of them little channels are going to make you a watertight business. And the reason I mentioned the pandemic is if for some reason, this is a bit of a silly example, but flyers didn't feel appropriate, sending 10,000 leaflets out and each one you've got in your hands and you're thinking that doesn't really give the right image off to my clients, you might need to cut flyers that month. It might feel a hard decision. That's going to have an impact on the business, but it's going to have a bigger impact if you didn't have all these other channels coming through that you could put that money you'd usually invest into flyers into something else. So I'm a big believer in let's know your cost per lead, but let's have a couple of streams coming in so that you've got a strong business, whatever may happen.
And that's a prime example, because when you're going to cut something, perhaps not due to your own desire to do so. It's a weird way to phrase it, but that was something I recommend. We did an episode in season 1 where we talked about social distance selling and digital door knocking. A lot of key phrases are going around, and there are a lot of people that still like physical flyers, leaflets, door hangers, things of that nature, because of that. And I think it's a bit overblown, but that psychological that people like tactile things. Well, all of a sudden, through a pandemic and a virus, a lot of people were touching a lot less things. Yeah. So you don't know. I mean, I know I had some high risk members of my family, and you talked about earlier. If you want this sale today, things like that. Is our mail had its own quarantine. As the early stages of this pandemic, we weren't quite sure. It just felt safer to us to kind of, push stuff in the box, let it, let it be in its own little quarantine for a day or two. And so a lot of those messages, just the timing was now thrown off, didn't really get to us. But if you decide to cut those flyers, and put it into something else, you want to know what else works. Additionally, the pandemic probably slowed a lot of jobs and a lot of revenue coming in. And that's where cost per lead is also sort of effective, because you now have an increased need for leads.
Yes.
You have your costs are going to also need to decrease. So knowing where it's going to be the best bang for your buck is very important. But when it comes to digital, assets. I kind of want to go a little bit in there. One being, that's what you guys, do very well at Digitool. But then also, I think 2020 showed that there's definitely even more of a need to make sure that even in the smallest of towns that you have a digital presence. Is there any digital format out there in the cost per lead sense? Do you think it's the most difficult almost to navigate or to understand? Like, is there one thing in the digital space that it's almost the hardest to determine how much value you're truly getting?
To be honest, no, because technology has got so much better. What do I mean by that? So just in that flyer example where you had Steve on one and Mark on the other, so that you could track which of my marketing campaigns were successful, you can do really similar things online. So for example, if you were running Google ads, which is the adverts at the top of Google, someone types plumber near me, your advert comes up. Rather than sending them through to your normal homepage, you could send them through to a landing page that still looks great. It's still got your reviews on there. It's still got amazing before and after pictures. But instead of having your usual number, it could have a really similar number. It could still look like a local number, but it could be slightly different. And what that does, and this is something we do in our own cleaning business, is we can then see which marketing campaigns have been successful this month, because we can look at our phone records and say we got this many inquiries from this phone number, which was our Google Ads campaign, and we got this many inquiries from our other phone number, which was our Facebook ads campaign. And what about our organic website, so our usual website that just ranks on Google itself? Well, that's got a different telephone number, so we can see how many inquiries that's had as well. So working out your cost per lead should be easier with digital marketing, because then things are available. And the cost of a telephone number is what, $5 a month, $10 a month? It's worth it if you can know your cost per lead, so that you can make these decisions like, okay, I've got an extra £1,000 this month. What, £1,000 or dollars this month? Which should I put it into? Okay, I've got to cut some marketing this month because the pandemic's been tough on us. Which one should go first? So you kind of need to be doing that tracking, because a cost per lead is going to be the power behind your business.
And you touched on one point of someone might have gotten your flyer, but then go search you online. And if the number they dial comes, from the website, you're able to kind of determine if it comes from, the flyer. You might have at least known where the retention comes from, in the sense of like where they remembered your number from, or what they kind of went down. So there's sometimes where physical assets may result in digital exposure as well. So just seeing your flyer drives to the website, but because there's such power behind with tracking and those natures, the digital realm, you're probably going to get better numbers. Though I think people still fear that. We go back to what we talked about with automation, is because it doesn't make sense. They think in their mind, like one physical flyer handing out turning into one job. All right, I can easily figure out my cost per lead. But the digital realm, as you put, is probably a bit easier in that regard.
And so a point you just mentioned there, which I think is really important. Statistics say that it takes 7 touch points before somebody decides to spend money with you. So 7 touch points could be they saw your van when it was sign written, it was parked outside their house or their neighborhood. It could be that they saw one of your technicians in a logo top in the queue for Walmart. They saw your leaflet, then they saw a retargeting ad on Facebook. It's not that you have to be doing all these things that week for that person to then convert. It's that in your village or your town or city, you want to be everywhere. So there is a real, that's kind of why I wave the flag for flyers, I wave the flag for sign written vans, because it all contributes to that person finally picking up the phone and spending money with you instead of any of your competitors.
So if cost per lead is kind of the magic metric for you, is there one in particular that you think is either overblown or overrated, or if anything, an issue comes along when you over focus on one in particular? Is there one, all right, hey, know your cost per lead, let's start there. That's the first should do.
Mhm.
what would you put almost as, I don't want to say the first shouldn't do, because there's very few metrics that you can ignore fully. Like everything builds up a data set.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way to always look at it. But is there one that might be an identifier if someone's going to look for marketing help? Like, hey, if they're focused on this, they're not really going to help you in the marketing element. There's the magic metric? Is there the poison metric, or that would be too strong a term?
Um, so I think all data is key, but when you're running a business, you're also doing 100 other things. You're the accountant, you're the salesperson, you probably make most of the coffee in the office. You end up doing a lot of things. So having a look at all of them numbers is overwhelming. And what will happen is you get number blind and you don't look at anything and you don't make any really important decisions about your marketing. So that's why I say focus on something like cost per lead rather than everything. Saying that, all metrics are important. The bits where I get little red flags is when a salesperson rings up your home service business and says, I can get you on the top page of Google, or I can get you 100 clicks into your business. That shouldn't be like, the answer to that shouldn't be wow. It should be like, okay, and how does that affect my business? Because being at the top of Google is great if it's costing you the right money and you're in front of your target audience, not just everyone, but your target audience, the people in your area, the people that are already kind of nurtured and they're likely to spend money with you. Clicks are great, again, if they are your target audience, if they're people that are wanting to spend money with you. Otherwise, they are vanity metrics. They're numbers that don't matter. So to answer your question, I don't think any data is wrong, but everything should be in context. So what I would be asking if anybody did phone you up and say, I can get you to the top of Google, what I would be asking is, well, are you working with any other similar businesses to mine? And if so, what cost per lead are you getting for them? And then you can figure out if the cost per lead is $50, let's say, that might make sense for you if you know that your average job value is $500 and you know what profit you get from that. Whereas $50 might not be a great cost per lead for you if every job is only $100 and the profit you get on that is smaller. So what you want to be doing is working out the cost per lead, and there isn't a good or a bad cost per lead. And then is that relevant for my business? If I plugged in that $50, could I spend $50 all day to get new customers? Does that financially work for my business? And it's going to be different for a window cleaner versus a carpenter versus a tree surgeon versus a carpet cleaner. They're all going to have different cost per leads that make sense for their business.
And we hear a lot about that top result on Google, and like, and being present. And you talk about, clicks are great, but if it's just clicks for click's sake, it doesn't really do anything. Your cost per lead more than likely is not really going to come down at all, because you're not actually getting leads, and you continually are paying for these services. Which touches on something that I think is another one of those terms that is, at face value, I think there's not enough understanding as people might believe. And I want to talk about like a conversion rate on your website. So we at NiceJob, we talk about, a convert website and why, we feel that it's the best way that you're going to end up getting, more leads and more sales in that regard. Because about conversion. And sometimes a little bit of the pushback we hear is like, well, how much traffic are you bringing? And I try to break down like, all right, well, if you have 100 versus 1,000, but then you're getting 5 customers versus 1 customer, does the number really matter? Could you touch a little bit, or maybe kind of explore a bit of conversion rate, kind of like what that means, but why it could actually be beneficial in adjusting the cost per lead?
Absolutely. So let's keep with that example of it's $50 for a cost per lead. So that's what you've decided is great for your business, and it's what your current Google Ads campaign is getting you. When you think about things like, okay, well, how much traffic am I getting to my website? So how many hundreds, thousands of people are coming to my website? How does that affect your cost per lead? So if your cost per lead is $50, there are a couple of things that you can do right now to improve that metric. So you might want to focus on trying to get $50 down because you wanted to focus on saving costs in your business. Or what might be more important to you is that $50, I don't want to get it down, but instead, when somebody for $50 picks up the phone and calls me, I want them to be the right sort of customer that is going to convert in, is going to be more likely to convert into a sale. So instead, my $50, rather than me trying to get it down to 40, I want them $50 to be converting into more jobs more often.
Yeah, because it's cost per lead, but that lead could be the lowest package you have, or that lead, if they're kind of more qualified there from the intro, is going to be the one that's going to get the premium or the platinum, or perhaps be a larger sale because they're a better lead in that sense.
Exactly that. So going back to traffic and the conversion rate on your website, if you want to focus on actually getting more of your $50 clients to convert, yes, we can send traffic to your website. Anyone can send traffic to your website. You could go and get traffic from India and China and Russia and the UK, and that might not be relevant for you. But what you've just figured out is, whoa, you've got thousands more people clicking on your site. Is that good for you? Is that good for you cost per lead? Probably not. But if we're looking at conversion rate, so of the people that come onto your site, so traffic is the number of people that come onto your site. Let's say there's 1,000 people that come onto your site. Your conversion rate is how many of them actually take an action and pick up the phone or fill out a booking form on your site. That's your conversion rate. And how that affects your cost per lead is, well, if we're getting more people converting on the website, that means we might get more people turning into inquiries, which might mean that our cost per lead comes down. Or does that make sense? Have I explained that?
Yeah, for sure. Because that's the reason I wanted to ask that specific question is kind of to also further define what a little cost per lead is. It's not always about lowering the cost, because would you pay a little bit more of a cost to get a more qualified lead, because that's probably a higher ticket. That's going to bring you more in. People, when they talk about they're competing in their market, perhaps or they feel they have a lot of price shoppers. Or things of that nature. Well, if you're getting a quality lead that might be eliminating that based on where your ad is placed, or how you're structuring it, anything of that nature, is that could adjust it. Because I think sometimes when you have that word cost in there, you're immediately kind of like, all right, what's the value?
Yeah.
The number is lower, but the value as a whole is really, I think, what makes cost per lead, as you said, kind of like this magic metric. Because if you're getting quality leads, and it is worth investing more in that platform.
Yes. And you've started to touch on it, but I really want to mention this is, once you've got your cost per lead, let's stick with that $50. Put that on your whiteboard. So I know that Google Ads brings me in $50. That's my cost per lead. And I know that my flyer campaign is $83. So you've got that on the whiteboard. Then as a team, you're looking, there's a couple of questions that I'd start to ask. I can think of 4 off the top of my head, but if anyone's watching this live and wants to comment anymore, feel free to. The first you could do is, how can we improve that cost per lead? Can we get it down any? That's one thing if you're looking at cutting costs, which I always think you should be trying to run a lean business. So I appreciate that. The next thing is, how do we get more of these leads? If you're wanting to grow, okay, well, when we spend $50, we get money back. So how do we want more of these? Well, should we put more money into Google Ads, or should we put more money into flyers? You can start to have them conversations. The next thing and the next metric I would be looking at is, okay, when we spend $50, getting somebody on the phone or getting someone to email, someone's now interested, how often are we turning that inquiry into a job? So if 10 people called your business today, that's just cost you $500 based on that $50 cost per lead. So it's cost you $500. Of them 10 people, how many of them are booking in and spending money with you? So another metric you can start to look at is, how do we increase that conversion rate? Do we need to speak to the girls that are answering the phone? Do we need to speak to the guys that are going out doing the quotes? And then the last thing that I'd be looking at is, what is your average job value? So when I spend $50 to get somebody on the phone and we figured out the likelihood of them turning into a customer, what does that equal? Is my average job value $120? Is it $500? And start to look at, well, how can I increase that a little bit? And can I be doing that by getting the right, with my marketing, getting the right sort of customers on the phone in the first place? So it's that perfect target audience so for carpet cleaning for us, it's a woman in her 40s to 60s, living in an affluent area in Manchester where my family are based. We know when we've got that lady on the phone, we're like, yes, she's our ideal customer. She's going to convert and she's likely to take on some of our upsells, and the average job value is going to increase. So if I know she's answered the phone, right, we've just spent $50, but I need to make sure I convert her, and I need to make sure that I am giving her a premium service and that she's coming back year on year. They're the metrics that I'm looking at once I've spent the $50 getting her on the phone. And they're the things that are in your control. And they're the easy things to fix. You can start to think about traffic on your website, click-through rate. You can look at, should I make my advert yellow or blue? I love stuff like that. Nerdy, getting in the detail of marketing is my bag. But is it your bag? Is it the thing that you need to be focusing on when you're running 100 things in your business? Instead, I'd focus on them 4 things. Can I improve the cost per lead? Can I get it down at all? Can I get more inquiries into my business? Can I improve the conversion rate from phone call to turning into a job? And can I increase my average job value? But I'm open to more if anyone's got any other ideas.
Yeah, and so if you have anything, put in the comment below. Even if you're watching on the replay, comment down below. I always invite our guests. I always let them know if anyone asks any specific questions or anything along that. So if you didn't catch it live, it's okay. We still want to see your comments and things down below. With that said, Daisy, I have a feeling that a lot of our listeners are going to ask me to invite you back again, because there's so much we can dive into, and I love that you've made real examples of everything. Is sometimes as marketers, I know we kind of sometimes get caught in the numbers or caught in the excitement of that and forget to relate it back to,
we call it caught in the fluff.
and forget to relate it back to, like, all right, well, here's how it works in your specific business. Here in season 2, I've been trying something new kind of at the end of each episode, which is, we bring on experts and they're able to kind of show their expertise. But I always like to remind people that even those that may be, the top of their field or very learned, things like that, I feel like everyone always has that one thing that they're like, I'm not quite an expert on it yet, but I'm excited to kind of learn. Is there something out there, within your realm that is the one challenge or I don't want to say the one goal, but, what is the one thing that you don't fully understand now that you're excited to find out about?
Oh, what a great question. Thank you for asking that. I love that. My one thing that I'm focusing on at the minute, and it feels a little bit left field, is I'm starting to learn and do qualifications in therapy. I'm not planning on being a therapist, but I feel the more I understand about myself and my clients, the more we can actually bring it into marketing. What do I mean by that is, a lot of therapy is like, how do you feel? What do you really want? What's going right in your life? What could be improved? And I like to ask them questions when I'm speaking to someone about their Google ads, because I'm not just trying to get you a great cost per lead. I am trying, just like I have been doing with my father's business, I'm trying to get you that life that you want. If you do want weekends off, or you want a 3-week holiday because you want to go to Disneyland with your kids, or you do want to be earning more, I really, really want to know what people want, because I think that's really important. I think it's the real reason we did all this. So therapy is the one thing that I'm really deep diving into, and I'm loving it, and I'm staying up late reading books about it and getting my nerd on, and I love it.
Well, we're excited to see kind of where that journey goes for you. And, as you learn along, if there's any key information that comes out, I know that you will share it, because you share the same spirit at Digitool as we kind of do at NiceJob, is helping those businesses and helping the owners out there. is really like what keeps the engine going, keeps the heart pumping, whatever, sort of
Yeah.
phrase you want to use. So good luck on that. It's very interesting. I've been doing a little bit of my own of trying to understand a bit kind of more of myself, because then I can, see myself in other people, but also kind of just understand if I know how I tick, understanding the journey that I went through, it would help with others. So
Yes, it's only helpful. Maybe in our next call, you can lay on the couch and I can be in the white jacket and can give you the full therapy session. But
anytime I can lay down and extend my legs, I'm all about it. So even if no progress is made, the change in posture I'll take. Daisy, thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast. If anyone's interested in learning more either from you or wants to pick your brain, where should we send them to? What's the best way to get in touch with Daisy Foster or Digitool?
yeah, sure. So our website, I'm going to spell it out because I thought this was an ingenious business name. And I've since found that with my British accent, no one knows what I'm saying. So the business name is Digitool, which is like digital and traders tools. So it's spelled Digitool. The website is godigitool.com. Yeah, I think if I could have start the business again, I would have decided to spell that better, because I must 4 times a day spell out my business name.
Well, don't worry. We will also have a link in our descriptions, in our summaries and things like that as well. Well, Daisy, I'm sure we'll have you back again, but have a good rest of the day today.
Thank you, Sean. It was lovely to speak to you, and really extended invite to anyone that's listening to this. I love helping trades businesses. I am not a salesperson at heart. So if you just want to ask for a bit of advice, if I can spare the time, I always will. So the website is godigitool.com. But if you want to email me personally, it's Daisy, DAISY, at godigitool.com. If you've got any questions about anything I've mentioned here or marketing ideas, probably won't say that I'll become your personal therapist, but always happy to have a try. Feel free to give me a message and I'll make the time for you.
I always don't know if we have to disclaimer there. Like, if you feel like you need a real therapist, perhaps go that way first.
Yes. Yeah.
However, if you have struggling, you think you might be a mental block related to your marketing, that's probably where the intersection would be. So you sort of reach out to Daisy. Well, thanks again. And thanks again to all of you that have tuned in and decided that you were going to give our podcast a go to try to make your business better. We appreciate each and every one of you out there. If you want to share this episode, like this episode, we'd absolutely love that. It helps kind of grow our message being spread. But then it also hopefully creates a nice community, which is what ultimately our goal is here. We're in season 2 now. We've got some great episodes coming up, usually on Thursdays. The schedule might shift a little bit, but we'll let you know all about that. But that's just about all for this episode. So if you're listening to the audio-only version, the summary is coming up in just a moment. But for the rest of you, I want to remind you once again to stay healthy, stay safe, and don't forget to have a little fun out there as well. We will see you next week. Have a great one, everybody.